Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a special episode of a SMAL podcast. Today, in this session, we are strictly going to be talking about the Seattle Kraken expansion draft. We've been hyped up for this one. It's coming up soon, coming up this week. So we're going to be digging into it right now. I am Luke.
I am Drake.
And I'm Dave, and let's get it cracking.
Oh, God.
Before we get into it, guys, don't forget to leave a like, share, subscribe to all our content, and if you can, ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-ling, the notification bell, so that you'll see things like this specific episode that we're very excited about.
Yeah, man.
Because
this is going to be good.
as sports fans, hockey is definitely up there for our favorites.
As Canadians.
Yeah.
Man, I've always been a Seattle Kraken fan.
Oh, my God.
Pretty much since I've been born.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like huge fan since they started.
Like, you can't even say that. I'm the Toronto Maple Leafs fan who is like hiding my head in shame and need to find a new team. Your team is young and outstanding and got really far this year when they shouldn't have. So you need to be proud. You need to suck it up. You're not a Seattle fan.
I know.
I am.
This might should be a good question, actually, before we even jump into it, talking about fan bases for this, right? Because this is the second overall, the kind of like expansion draft we've had recently, which is actually pretty exciting. When it comes to fan bases, especially the Canadian side, because Canadian, we have our teams that we can kind of love and go for. And typically everybody tries to keep between Canada, unless you're like our buddy Dave Anderchuk goes for Tampa for some reason.
Yeah, there's a lot of people around here, though, that are big Boston fans and stuff, too.
Well, yeah, but they're close to us.
Geographically, it makes
Proximity,
sense, right?
yes.
So with Seattle coming, Seattle actually is pretty close, but there's also a Vancouver team. Like typically Seattle would be popular for soccer or something like that, or something that like people in Vancouver could easily jump down to face Seattle and go do that. Do you guys think that there's going to be a lot of Canadian Seattle fans this year? Do you think people are going to lead teams?
I think the same as what happened with Vegas.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to dislike them. You can't hate a team that is literally brand new. So like nobody really hates the Golden Knights. Like you're actually super impressed because their first season they jumped in and got into the playoffs and made it really far. Like, the same thing that's going to happen here is if they are able to at all do the same as Vegas did and jump in and have a really competitive team, get close to the playoffs, get into the playoffs, whatever, it's just all going to be really impressive. I don't think anybody's going to hate them. I just don't know how many like immediate fans they're going to grab. I mean, of course they're going to fill out their stadium and stuff because there's going to be deals. There's a brand new team, all these players to watch, everybody's going to have a player that's from their team that's now on their team.
Like a favorite player or something.
And very well could be, right? I mean, we're going to get into a lot of that as we discuss the possibility of the available players and who's going to be drafted and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of big name players, and a lot of the time, if you're taking from a team, you're not going to take like a low level guy who's nobody. Like they're probably taking a half decent player or somebody that people really know and enjoy. So everybody's going to have a player on that team that they're like, oh, that's my guy. You took my guy.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's inevitable that team's going to have some favorability.
On the same sense of that, they're gonna be like, "That's my guy, man. You guys got my guy. I like Seattle."
Yeah,
Or I
that's
hate
what
Seattle
mean.
because they
It's
just
like either way, right?
Have they
I think too that they will have a big fan base because they did a phenomenal job of their logo, their color scheme, the jerseys.
Have they come out with the jerseys?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I saw it, but it was a while ago. I feel
Man,
like, right?
they look awesome. They're a cool color scheme. Like, so even like new fans of hockey, I'm like, oh, like everyone knows. Like, whenever you're like a kid and stuff, you often jump on a bandwagon of a team because of the colors too.
Well, it's the
they are
marketability of that team, right? It's like their color schemes, their logos, their players, but like
city
their
itself.
name, the city, like Seattle Kraken was pretty cool. They had a vote set up for that. They did a lot of stuff. Like there was a lot of like fan based submissions for what they thought the color should be, what they thought the logos should be, all that kind of stuff. So they've had the NHL fan bases really brought in on all of this. So I feel like, they've done really well so far in getting themselves to a point of being able to be popular.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, are they going to kill this draft?
Yeah.
So
That's really what it is.
Speaking of,
So Drake, how is this going to work?
Okay, so in terms of it, Seattle will be allowed to select one player from every NHL team.
Right.
Right? which makes
One
sense.
from each.
One from each.
Yeah.
And then the Kraken must draft a minimum of 14 forwards,
Mm-hmm.
9 defensemen, and 3 goalies.
Fill the roster. Okay.
Yeah.
So that being said, obviously, and just like last time, anybody can protect anybody that on their team that they want to have. And they have 2 options that they can do this in, right? So you've got option 1 where you can protect 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie, or you can just do 8 skaters,
Which is
and a
forward and
goalie.
a defenseman.
Forwards and defensemen combined. So if you want to do more of one or each, or depending on what you want
Right.
to do.
So option A or option 1 being pretty standard, and you get a chance to actually keep a little bit more. You get to keep a total of 10 guys?
It's 11 with the
11.
goaltender.
Sorry, 11.
Yeah. 10 skaters and 1 goaltender, or 8 overall skaters and 2 goaltenders.
No, it's only 1 goalie, isn't it?
No, it's one goal.
it's one goaltender.
One
Yeah.
goaltender.
So the only reason why you'd want to go option 2 is if you wanted to keep more defensemen than 3 or more forward than 7.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
right?
also how your
Yeah.
contracts are probably going to work out, because
course.
there are like asterisks to this where like players with no movement clauses must be protected unless the clause is waived.
Yeah.
And
Carey.
then players with less than 2 years NHL experience are ineligible to be selected.
Yeah.
And then each
No
team's
Caulfield.
protected list is obviously that's happened about July 17th. Obviously,
Yeah.
they can't just be like, oh wait, never
It
mind.
was yesterday. It was yesterday that they
Yes.
locked and loaded. Now the GM of Seattle's like, oh, it's our birthday, let's go.
They're like Christmas Day, like, okay, our list is here. What
Yeah.
can we do?
So we started that right off the bat because obviously the big thing that you've talked about right off the bat is Carey Price. Because that's a big thing where he's now available essentially. But he's got the big contract. So if you're Seattle,
And Montreal has protected Jake Allen.
yeah. So if you're so is Montreal doing that because they assume that Carey's contract is so big that he's not going to get picked up, or do you think that maybe
It's a two-sided coin.
high risk, high reward,
Yeah,
right?
a lot of the articles have been saying very much that it's high risk, high reward, and we kind of talked about it when we were a little bit into one of the last podcasts there. Carey Price is a heavy duty contract, so they love Carey Price. Montreal loves Carey Price. Montreal fans love Carey Price. Nobody wants to see him leave. I don't think anybody on that team or that organization does actually want to see him leave.
No.
Because he's still got plenty of years
Carey
left.
would be okay to leave.
But it's kind of two-sided, because if he does leave, you're sad, but you're at the same time like, look at all this money we have. Scrooge McDuck, like, we have a pool of money now.
Yeah,
like,
the way I think of Bergevin's like, take him.
yeah,
You fucking won't.
yeah, you won't, you
And then they
won't.
take him. They go, shit.
Yeah,
But okay.
yeah,
Damn.
yeah. Like, you
mixed
don't want to
emotions.
see him leave, but then at the same time, you make him available. They don't take him. You just saved another possible player that could have been gone.
So yesterday, I was having a chat with Ryan on Discord. So him and I are we talk about hockey a lot. We yesterday locked in that Carey was no longer protected. He waived his clause so he could so they could protect Jake Allen. And part of my heart just dropped for a second. But the other part of me, I've been saying it in the back of my head, and I've been saying it out loud for a few months now, is Carey would love to go to Seattle. He's from the West Coast. His wife is from right outside of Seattle. It makes sense for him to move. He just had his probably his best opportunity to win the cup with Montreal. I mean, I don't see us going repeat. It could be, but we have we have the second worst draft pick next year too, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Carey could easily. I could see them taking.
So
him.
how big was Fleury's contract when he was picked up by the Vegas? Was it a
Same idea.
Same idea,
So
right?
this is almost identical in my mind to what happened with Las Vegas.
Super similar.
Was again at that point, Fleury was later in his years, not obviously, not
God.
at the end of his playability, but he had a big contract. The Penguins already had another goaltender behind him that they said, okay, he's a startable player. We have somebody else if they do take him. We don't want them to take him, but if they do, then we've lost some money and we still have a good goaltender. So it's almost the exact same situation. And I mean, hey, worked out for Vegas.
yeah? And the
Yeah.
thing about if you're Carey Price, I feel and any player, when there's an expansion draft or something like that, when a team decides to pick you up in an expansion draft, it's you can maybe be upset a little bit at maybe Montreal if he wanted to stay there, being like, you guys didn't protect me, what the hell? But at the same time, you have a massive contract, but at the same time, there was no control because that team says, hey, Carey, we want you on our team, and so we're gonna pick you for this. And there's no, they traded me for nothing, or
Right,
they let me go to
exactly.
free agency or anything like that. So I feel like it's a more positive experience transitioning to this team rather than having to go through a trade or doing whatever. The only animosity maybe is just because he wasn't protected, but I feel like any article, any media company, any news article is going to just itch at the chance of putting some kind of dramatic story behind it when there probably wasn't much of one.
This thing that you just said is the perfect segue into the next most popular available player, which is again another big name within our group with Jesse and Gabriel Landeskog. So he would be outside of Carey Price. He's probably the next most highly touted available player, captain of Colorado Avalanche, and there's now a little bit of animosity between him and the executives with Colorado because they're making him available. They're not protecting him. There's been some issues going back and forth on contract extensions and all that kind of stuff. So there's a little bit of bad blood happening there, and he's now available within this draft, which is
if he doesn't get drafted, he will want to trade.
Yeah.
That's so it's a phenomenal segue with what you just said there, Drake. Like most of the time in terms of the expansion, there's less heartache, less animosity, but in certain cases like this one, it's like, what do you mean? I've been with you guys. You guys drafted me.
I am your captain.
I'm your captain. I've been your captain for what 4 or 5 years now. 5, maybe 6 years.
We're a top level team. We were
the best team in the
West.
NHL last year. I'm the captain of the best team in the NHL, and you're not going to protect me. He's like,
well,
shit.
it's not necessarily the protecting. It's they haven't gotten his contract done to be able to protect him.
Yeah.
He's a UFA.
Yeah.
So they're letting him go in as an unrestricted free agent so that Kraken
Can
have
set
the
us-
ability
can
to
set
say, I'm taking you and I'm going to pay you this.
Yeah.
The money that you wanted from Colorado that they're not going to give you,
Come
we'll
get
give
it,
you.
baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
so
man.
that goes into my
It'd be crazy
next
not to.
question then about this, because this is the one aspect I actually don't know about when it comes to this. Does Seattle have a salary cap that they have to abide
100%.
by?
Yeah.
Right? Because
So-
you would think, because you can't just pick anybody.
Yeah, we're gonna get the best player from every team.
It's actually pretty interesting. There's 2 different clauses. They have to spend a certain amount of money, but they can't spend more than $81.5 million, which is the salary cap. They have to spend at least $49.5 million in the draft.
So when it comes to
So they actually have to spend money.
So when it comes to the guy in Colorado, where they didn't get the contract, like, I mean, was there a story in terms of like they didn't get it because he was asking for too much money and they didn't know if they had
There's
it?
still a negotiation.
There's still negotiation. So it's more of a fault, kind of like a WTF, because being like, you guys knew this draft, like this draft didn't just come out of nowhere. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you guys probably should have figured it out. So, I mean, from his perspective, probably, I'm assuming if you get picked up by Seattle, and I would hope that Seattle's probably respectable enough to be like, hey, look, we're going to give you some good money. This is a situation where
He'll get what he wants.
Like
if they pick him.
Landeskog has only ever played for Colorado.
Yeah, he's drafted.
So like
by them.
this is like it's crazy that the negotiations have stalled from them, because if they would have been able to get into that spectrum where they actually agreed to something and had the ability to protect him, like that very well should have and could have happened. But now that it hasn't, those negotiations stalled. Now there's a little bit of bad blood. He's still a UFA. Like Seattle can pick him right up and say, listen, here's your money, man. Like, let be our captain. Like if I was them, I'd be thinking that very same thing.
Is he a projected first round pick?
He's like, well, there's no real rounds to this, but yeah,
but like the first
he'll
pick.
be one of the first ones, I would imagine. I can't see how they'd be stupid enough to not take him. He's 28. He's already got leadership experience. He's a great player. He's a good teammate. He's coming from a situation where he was not being given what he wanted. You pay him a good amount of money, and he'll be your star.
Is that not part of the? Is that not? First and foremost, let's rewind a second. This draft happens on Wednesday at 9 p.m. and we are going to be doing a live reaction to this,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, hell yeah.
Just so you guys all know, you should tune in.
Shameless plug.
See how we're going.
It'll be like a companion video for anybody who wants to know. Like, we'll have it up here. Obviously, with copyright purposes, we can't have it up on the screen, but it'll be like a companion video. So if you want to hear us talk about it at the same time, or anything like that, for maybe a fresh perspective in comparison to maybe, by no means are we professional NHL analysts, but if you want to see just a different conversation,
Yes, we are.
yeah, if you want to see a
Dave
different
over here,
conversation,
Pierre LeBrun. Like,
this could be a pretty fun way if you just kind of want to if you guys have been following us and you want to see how it goes. So it'll be kind of like a companion video with it.
So what I was going to get to, based off that, is not one of the coolest and most fun part about all of this, finding out who's going to be captain and assistant captains.
yeah, man.
I love that.
Well, like, and man, we're finding perfect segues here. This is great. Because the next the next most popular possible available player or made available player would be Vladimir Tarasenko. And to me, he's like almost the exact same as William Karlsson. And William Karlsson was one of the first guys picked up for Vegas.
Yeah.
He jumped in as an assistant. Like, he's been one of their best players. And I feel like Tarasenko is pretty much the same kind of guy, same style of player. He's had some issues going ahead with St. Louis. He asked for a trade. So now, instead of getting traded, he might just get picked up. His contract's pretty big. Pretty big yearly. He's $7.5 million a year, but it's only 2 years.
Okay.
So there's a short term. He's a great player. He's kind of stalled out with, what he had been doing in St. Louis. And I think that when you come into it with that, again, next level of a big star who's already proven and done well, he should be able to jump right in behind Landeskog as part of the leadership of that team and really be able to make them something. And like you said, it'd be really exciting to see who's actually going to get those season A's.
Yeah, the top 10 list, obviously Seattle can't afford them all.
No.
That's the cool thing, right? You're not quite sure who they're going to go with out of the top 10. Probably 5 of them are going to go. Maybe 6, maybe even 7 if they really play their cards right. But I mean, you don't know which of these guys are going to be the pick, which is really kind of like, that's so exciting about it. But yeah, another captain, Mark Giordano.
Oh, yeah.
From Calgary. They didn't protect him. That's a big time leader, a guy that's been there for years. Another, like I said, another captain. But I don't think there's any animosity there that I've heard of, anyways.
No, I think honestly, just for the Giordano side of things, is he's old. Like in reference to athletes and NHL and that kind of thing, he's 37. Like, he's been a big name for Calgary for the longest while. He's a great leader. He's still performing at a high level, but he's just an old guy on a bit bigger of a contract than he probably deserves. I think he was only like a 1 year, 6-7 mil, but 6-7 mil is probably what he's going to expect. So does Seattle want to take him and put in, a 4 or 5 year contract of what his agents are probably going to want at 6 or 7 mil a year? I don't know. Like, at that age, like, do you do like what mostly Vegas did, is going with younger guys,
right?
Like when Vegas started and did their expansion draft, they didn't have many older guys. I think Fleury was one on the team.
Yeah, like Pacioretty,
because they still have a great spot in the actual NHL draft.
Pacioretty was traded, not drafted. My apologies.
Yeah, traded. Yeah.
A question from that then, just based off what you're saying there, he's a bit of an older player, and because we've talked a lot about obviously getting captains and your star players and that, personally, I still think it's in situations like this where you're probably going to get a lot of young guys, especially you're going to have your draft come in to an area where there's not a lot of culture established just yet because you're still building it. I feel like the role players in this situation are just as important because in a lot of teams now that have been established for years and years and years and have just been building and rebuilding and doing whatever, some teams lack role players. I still think about Toronto in that sense. Like they have star players, but they lack role players. The players that essentially are the weaving that keeps everybody together, in my opinion. And when you're putting a brand new team together, you need guys that are smart enough that can adapt to any situation. Guys who, in all honesty, and this is going to be like a weird football thing, but if you look at like a Ryan Fitzpatrick, somebody who's played on a bunch of different teams that can adapt themselves to any situation and teach these and help bring these guys kind of together. Yeah. So like, I don't know, is there any guys that are available you think that might fit that kind of role player kind of
Stanley Cup champion? Yanni Gourde, in my eyes, I think is a phenomenal
and he's
quiet under the radar.
He's one of those top 10 guys on this list, and I think it's largely because one, Stanley Cup prowess, still pretty young, has a pretty decent contract, is a $5 million a year kind of guy, nothing crazy. But again, inevitably you're going to be going back to Vegas on this. That's what Vegas did, man. Las Vegas came in with the expansion draft and got pretty much second and third liner guys. Didn't get any like crazy first line absolute balling stars. Didn't get any kind of like lowly like fourth line kind of guys. So they came in with a second and third setup of guys that were all just deep, could play anything, went in together and just kind of made it big, right? So Yanni Gourde would be one. I would think probably Ryan Johansson.
Yeah.
Coming out of, he's not out of Nashville anymore, is he? He got
Columbus. Yeah,
Columbus. Yeah. So yeah, like he'd be another guy at 28, pretty decent contract.
I think of two Matts too, Matt Dumba and Matt Duchene.
Duchene, yeah. Yep.
And
because
guys like PJ
Duchesne's
Subban,
he's jumped around to a couple of
expensive,
teams. Like,
but
yeah,
There's a lot
Subban would be expensive. I personally, I don't think he'll probably go. Like $9 million a year for Subban's a lot
hefty.
now.
It's hefty.
Yeah, it's a lot now. But I guess it's tough because everybody said Subban was bad in the locker room, but since he's left Montreal, it's been nothing but good. Really not super noteworthy either, but
The team in general not phenomenal.
yeah.
But it's hard to put lipstick on a pig sometimes.
But
Nice.
But like there's a notable name I saw in there. It was like Getzlaf was one of the ones that was like a notable name in there. Like he's been in the league for a while, right? Like he's been around a bit. Like what do you guys think about? Like, do you think that he would be a good pickup for them in terms of that? Or?
Is he going in as a UFA or is he going in with a contract? I gotta look that
You
up.
double check
because
that, but I can speak to Getzlaf for a little bit here.
Yeah.
Getzlaf's the goddamn man. if like he's just been that go-to leader for such a long time. I mean, they'd be lucky to have him, but he's gonna be expensive too. Again,
He's
right?
a UFA.
Okay.
And
Very
like
well.
at his age,
Is there anyone else you're gonna take from Anaheim?
Well, from Anaheim probably. I mean, there's a couple of players on there that you would think like Kevin Shattenkirk as a defenseman,
Yeah, good
probably half worthwhile. They have Adam Henrique.
Yeah.
He's a little expensive. He's closer to the $6 million a year, but he's still a good leading player. David Backus is a UFA coming from them too. So they have some decent available players, but with Getzlaf, if you can get him on a vet minimum,
There's your captain.
well, a captain, like an assistant probably,
Yeah.
at least, but coming in with a vet minimum who's still very playable,
Even if
who's
they
a great
took-
leader.
Even if they took Getzlaf, Landeskog, and Giordano, Getzlaf's probably the C.
Yeah.
Who
Well,
would you bring in that would be a
You
captain
might want to
ahead of
give Landeskog the C because he's
Just
going to be
because he's
there
gonna be
longer.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to chat about, because again, it comes down to youth versus experience. How quickly does Seattle want to be competitive? Do they want to just kind of start young and give themselves a couple years to get established? Whereas like the Knights did that, but they kicked ass right off the hop, which is really cool. But I mean, if you think about it, you're giving this brand new team a very good opportunity to start off hot out of the gate, right? Let's talk about goalies. Because there are some significant names still available.
Yeah, like we obviously talked about Carey
Carey,
Price,
yeah.
and if I'm Seattle, I'd take Carey, but there's so many big names.
So would you both agree? I know I'm going to say this. Would you both agree with me that you'd be pretty shocked if Carey doesn't leave?
Yeah, like I think
Like 75% chance.
for
in
how
my
important because it's a goalie. Like I know we talked about the contract being big, but because it's a goalie, right? Like it's not like it's somebody had a really big contract and it was defenseman where there's a crazy amount of others you can pull from and maybe get close. Like the difference in talent or the difference in respect, difference in the kind of experience and what Carey brings in that role, I feel like outshines if you were to say get a really good defenseman or forward or anything like that. Like I think that is such a core aspect that you need, and I think that's why Vegas did so well and they picked up Fleury was a similar situation, right? Like you're not going to pass on a name like that on a goalie that is just so good. And in all honesty, Carey played fantastic. I think, and in the playoffs,
the best teams out there, especially when you're building from scratch, whether you're doing a dynasty league of fantasy or you're playing on in Chell, the best teams build from the net out.
Yeah.
So you got to start with that, right?
Yeah. You need
So
somebody who can bail
outside
you
of
out.
Carey, there's some phenomenal options.
So that's why I would say I'm really not sure. I'm 50-50. If I'm the Seattle GM, I want Carey.
Yeah.
But
He's got 4 years in him, probably.
looking at the 3D level chessboard that we're playing here, the reality of whether Carey may go or not, I don't know because there's so many good available options. Martin Jones is available.
Rask,
and Halak.
Bishop.
John Quick, Matt Murray.
Yeah.
Freddie Anderson. There's so many current starting goaltenders that are phenomenal.
Rene.
Pickin Rene retired.
Oh, is he?
I think he just retired
I missed
a
that
couple
one.
weeks ago.
Okay.
So it's just recent.
for him.
Yeah, just recent.
Congratulations, Peke. Thanks for everything you've done.
So in saying that, Luke, then while you're going through those names of guys who are still very good, Matt Murray obviously did a fantastic job coming off of Fleury and everything like that. He's a good guy. Played in Sault Ste. Marie where I'm from. same high school, everything like that. You know, and so I know I'm a bit more familiar with him. But do you go with like to say give up a guy like Carey, who in my opinion could bail out your having maybe a more lackluster defensive line or anything like that, right? Because that's a big thing. Like, yeah, okay, you can have a respectable goalie, good solid ground goalie, but if you're going to go through some growing pains, if there's a chance, because we don't know that. I think a lot of time we're assuming that they're going to knock it out of the park, kind of like Vegas did, but they may not.
No, they could flop hard.
They may not, right? Like in terms of the players available compared to when the players were available for Vegas and things like that, like it is a little bit of a changing. Now teams also, this is kind of might be a slight segue, but where Vegas is recent, owners have now experienced what happened there,
Learn from
their mistakes from protecting and not protecting other players.
Yeah.
So, you know, where you may not have as strong as maybe players being drafted or not, having maybe a really strong goalie to bail out your team in times where you might need it. Because I do think that Carey did that a lot of the time too when in the playoffs, like when times where it just felt like Montreal couldn't get anywhere and there's shot after shot after shot going in. They were getting outshot like crazy. He was doing a very good job of bailing them out. So 100%. It's like when you see that, you're like, man, like this is a good just kind of safety blanket for me to.
Well, the other thing. So going back to one of the initial points is they have to draft 3 goaltenders. The other reason that you would think Carey Price is probably going to be a player that would be a great choice is you can go into this draft and take 2 other super cheap young goaltenders like Malcolm Subban's out there.
Yeah.
And Kako is out there. Like there's
there's
still other like really like young, cheap, great guys that stand
Can
behind,
learn
from Carey. And then when Carey starts to stall off, they're definitely a serviceable backup. Like,
that is very much a Matt Murray situation there, right? In a way, like Matt Murray was drafted there, he learned from Fleury. Fleury then got taken off, and he hit off with his stride. Obviously, he had a bit of playing time in the playoffs a little bit before that, obviously, but I think that's a pretty good situation where I think you hit it right on the head there. Yeah. In all honesty,
yeah. I always think of Chell. I always think of NHL. Whenever you are playing Chell, when you pick your team, each team has 3 stats to combine for a total stat, right? An average stat. You have offense, you have defense, and then you have a little standalone goaltending. You have to build from the net out. And I think that they'd be silly if they don't take Carey. And for me, I think Carey wants to go. It all adds up in terms of his wife and where he's from and all that stuff too.
Dave, we were being so credible, and now you're making it seem like we're building an NHL franchise and Chow, buddy. Come on,
they are. They're building a team, right? Now, that being said, I would like to touch base on, I want to jump back to option 1 versus option 2. Okay. So 7 forward, 3 defensemen, 1 goalie is option 1. Option 2 is 8 skaters and a goalie. So you can keep 2 less people, which is pretty significant. Protect 2 less people. Only 3 teams took option 2. That was your your Toronto Maple Leafs, the Nashville Predators, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. And that was all because none of those 3 did it for forwards. They all did it for 4 or more defensemen, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah.
Again, building from the net out, you want to keep that defense, strong.
With Tampa Bay, zero surprise.
Oh yeah, their defense is incredible.
They have great young defenders, and there's just no way that you could pick 3 or 4. Like in option 1 to pick 3 of those guys, be crazy.
You have to. I think they kept 5.
Yeah.
Nashville kept 5. And that's probably because Nashville's like, well, you can have our forwards, like it's fine.
Yeah.
And then Toronto, same thing. They have really good defense right now too, which is really weird for Toronto.
Do you think that's a sign that Dubas is potentially shaking things up there a bit? Like where he's like, I'm picking different players I want to keep as a core, and that might be more defense. But because there's been talk of a potential shakeup in Toronto, like it's been every year, but like there's been a talk of potential shakeup that potentially he could be looking to shake things up a little bit more in this offseason.
So from a Toronto fan perspective, I think the reason that they are probably going ahead with protecting as many defensemen as they are is they've put in so much work to get these defenders that they finally wanted, and they're like finally starting to work. And outside of some of the young guys that are coming in, like they have Dermott, that's now available, but they've just re-signed him in Cali Rosen, which is again a recent signing, or well, not a recent signing, who's a UFA, but a young guy that they probably would like to hang on to. If they get taken, it's really not that big of a deal.
I think Dermott's probably your most likely to leave.
Yeah, I would think so too.
I think.
But again, they have all these other defenders that they've invested so much time and effort in trading and acquiring and signing that they've gotta hang on to them.
Yeah.
And again, they've got Jack Campbell, which they've protected.
Well, let's talk about who they've protected, and I want to hear your opinion on if they did well or if they made a mistake or where your brain's at on there.
I'm going to talk to you about that in the other side of it, of who they haven't protected,
okay,
and why I think it's probably okay that they've protected the guys they have. So Frederik Andersen, Michael Hutchinson, David Rich for goaltenders are available. They've only protected Jack Campbell, and I'm totally
100%.
Cool with that.
Yeah, of course.
He made a name.
Spot.
Yeah, he made a name for himself. He came in, he earned that starting spot, he earned that playoff spot. They did nothing with it, unfortunately, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with that.
And I mean, Anderson's contract probably isn't the cheapest either, eh?
No, Anderson is a UFA this year.
Okay, perfect.
But they don't want to pay him.
No,
they don't want to pay him.
No.
And I wouldn't either. I'm
Right.
totally fine with Freddie being gone, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he will leave, but as a UFA, I think they're going to let him test the market, and then if he doesn't get money, they can pay him cheaper and keep him.
True.
Which again, I'd be cool with.
Yeah, because he can say, "Well, no one else wanted to pay you what you want. Like, we'll pay you a little bit less than what you wanted.
Yeah.
Stay with your team."
And if he goes on a half decent contract somewhere else, man, we weren't going to pay you, so good for you. Like that's fine. But yeah, they obviously protected a number of different defensemen, and again, I think Dermott is probably the guy that's going to go. Dermott is coming in under $1 million a year, which is a really good contract for a young guy like that. Beyond that, they like Marinson, they're letting go as a UFA. Cali Rosen letting go as a UFA. Ben Hutton, Bogosian. Like again, those are not name guys that you really care to keep, and they're probably not going anywhere anyway.
Right.
And then for forwards, obviously there's quite a few of them that they did keep, the young guys that they needed to.
Marner, Matthews,
but they've got a massive list of guys
just
who are
so
still
the people
available.
know, they've kept Marner, Matthews, Nylander, and Tavares, of course.
Yeah.
And then on defense, a really good choice again, too. Brody, Hull, Muzzin, and Riley.
Yep. And yeah, it's a no-brainer. Those are the four guys that you've invested in that got you there, that you need to keep, and the four young studs in your captain.
Yeah.
That's there you go.
I think Toronto Maple Leafs crushed their protections.
Yeah, but
I hate to see it.
Those are no-brainers.
I hate to see it as a Habs fan. I hate to see it.
Those are no-brainers. But then you're looking at the guys that they're letting go, like Nick Foligno, again, recent acquisition, but he's a UFA. Galchenyuk, again, recent acquisition, but a UFA. So you let them get out there, and if they want to get paid, great. If they don't get paid by the Kraken, then you get a shot at them.
Home.
Yeah, you get a shot at them again. And then I mean, there's guys like Jarrett McCann. He's actually on a couple of the lists with Sportsnet and that kind of thing that's could be a big one for Seattle. He might be another one that could go. He's just a recent acquisition, literally from a trade this week. But he's a good young guy with a small contract, like less than $3 million a year, that he could probably walk in as a second or third liner for the Kraken and do well.
I think that's a big thing though too, right? Because I think a lot of people are like with their favorite team, obviously Luke and the Leafs and that, and you and the Habs. You know, a lot of times you look at, okay, these are the guys that were protected. Okay, cool. But then you also get really worried that like the guys that weren't protected, the guys that maybe you like, but I think the natural thing is like, oh, man, they could pick my whole team. Like, you know, you forget that they can only pick like one, right? Like,
exactly.
But everyone thinks like, oh my god, they could pick everybody, and like, it's like no, they can only get one.
You're
so
looking at this list of unprotected guys, like, oh my god, they're all gone.
Yeah. So your whole team could very much still stay the same.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
like
It's gonna be very
you're only
similar.
gonna get one. Right?
Now, that being said, for my team,
Yeah.
so I'll go through the list that they protected. I do think Montreal nailed this one. There's two forwards that I'm a little nervous that are unprotected. But I mean, you couldn't plug and play them for anyone else. So they have Josh Anderson, Joel Armia, thank God, Jake Evans, Brendan Gallagher, which honestly, I love Gally. I'd be okay if he left. I really would. Jesperi Kakanyemi, thank God.
Yeah.
Lehkonen, thank God. Tyler Toffoli earned himself a spot on the team
100%.
because of his crazy plays this year.
Yeah.
And then for defense, Sherratt, Edmondson, and Petrie. Very happy with that. Now, guys that really kind of stress me out a little bit. Philip Deneau and Paul Byron.
But Paul Byron's making too much money.
I know.
He's making too much money. That's why he's there. Again, absolutely. Like with what he did in the playoffs and how well he performed with the young guys in the team, like fantastic. You want to keep him.
Yeah.
But he's making too much money.
I know.
And Seattle's not going to take him.
Well, I mean, the thing with me is I'm worried about Deneau specifically, the most probably. But at the end of the day, I'm like, it's going to be Carey.
Yeah.
So the rest of the team's fine.
Yeah.
Those. I mean, and I'm going to be sad. Again, it's so weird. Like, if Carey leaves, like, Montreal's in a weird spot, man. Jake Allen is the starting goalie. Don't get me wrong. Jake Allen is a good goaltender. You know, homeland guy from Freddie. God love him. And he gets to play at the Montreal Canadiens, which is awesome. But I mean, do they draft a goalie? Do they try and pick one up in free agency? Like, where do we go? If you lose a guy like Byron or Deneau, like, it's like, cool. We're back. Let's go to the playoffs again. Carey leaves. It's like, well, what's our team?
Yeah.
What do we look like?
It's going to be weird.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, through a lot of this, we've obviously chatted a bit. And for our listeners out there, you know, obviously we're chatting a lot about our teams that we're very either familiar with or favorite or anything like that. And we're Canadian, so a lot of it revolves around that and whatnot. But in terms of that, so I mean, like, if we missed anybody, because we may have people who are fans of any team that are out there, like, you didn't talk about our team.
Vancouver,
you know, unfortunately,
and Ottawa.
we can't talk about all of the teams. This would go on forever. So we are talking about obviously some ones that are like that, but to kind of bring it all together, I mean, we're probably going on for about 36 minutes now. So, like, you know, to kind of bring it all maybe together to slight bit of a closing. If you guys are, because I want to talk about how Vegas has been there and now we're at Kraken. What are your overall, do you think that Kraken are going to do better or worse than how Vegas have come out?
I am probably, I'm thinking that they won't do quite as well as Vegas because, again, now
What a high bar of expectation to try and catch up to, though, right?
Exactly. And now teams are kind of prepared for how this expansion draft will work, how it's going to look, and how they're going to, you know, be stacked. I know it was a rule from the last one as well, but I feel like it really does hinder the ability of players that you can pick in the last draft and in this draft. If they're within 2 years of starting in the league, that they can't be involved in this draft. There's been a lot of young players that have come into this league that don't have to be protected, that are game changers for other teams that they're not going to have access to. So with Seattle picking from guys, seemingly for the most part, a lot of the big guys that they're going to get are going to be in their late 20s. Again, it's a lot of guys who are seasoned, who have the ability to really like do something immediately, but I feel like they may end up missing a step on how that team is going to be able to grow up and how they're going to be able to do in future years. Hey, maybe they shoot for the stars like Vegas did. Maybe they do get that big hop, skip, and a jump right off the start. I think how this year's actual NHL rookie draft goes is going to be big because maybe they get a couple of the big name young guys that are coming in now and really start a good kind of like farm of their team. The one thing I don't know that I wish I did is if Seattle is going to have an AHL team.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do or don't. I really wish I did know that. Anybody in the comments, let us know.
I'll tell you this, and the only reason being previously living in Newfoundland, it did just come out in Newfoundland, at least. They've previously had AHL teams that they're not having the St. John Edgeridge, their Canadian Basketball League team, come back because apparently there's a new franchise coming into town. Mm-hmm. Could it be that we're going to get an AHL team back there?
Yeah.
It would be it could be an ideal city. They do have
a hell of a flight.
They did it before.
Yeah.
I know.
It was from Montreal.
Yeah,
and
that's
it was
a lot
Winnipeg.
less of a flight.
Yeah.
Literally not across the whole country.
Yeah, but
Very
there's
large country.
but there's teams. There's teams.
5-hour difference.
They did it for Winnipeg too. Yeah. Right, like it is large because in the end they're not playing because they're necessarily close to it. They're just an AHL team that has that affiliation.
Another place that they can get decent marketing from.
100%.
Like Newfoundland would love to have.
Newfoundland would eat that up. Kraken, Like I know they wouldn't
Right,
be. I know
yeah.
they wouldn't be the Kraken, but like it is on the ocean
Yeah.
as well. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
you could arguably say that Seattle almost has coast to coast to like. So
Yeah.
like a Canadian option might be an option there when
Yeah.
it comes to it.
I'm gonna have to do some research.
I'm
on
going
that.
to jump
It's a
back to your
glaring issue.
question. 'Cause
Yeah,
Luke did
sorry,
a good
buddy.
job answering his side of things. I want to jump into it as well.
Yeah.
I think the expectation is so high with Vegas, but I think there's a lot of things that happened. I think that currently this year the available players are higher tier than when the Knights pick their
You agree?
squad, and it's probably like a slight bump.
Okay.
But the Kraken have a better opportunity, but to be as good as Vegas had done it, I don't know if they can, because when Vegas came into things, I think the rest of the league also kind of slept on them.
Yeah.
They didn't expect them to come in and be who they were. They just kind of played them. They're like, oh shit, like this is actually a really good NHL team. They kind of in the back of the head they're probably like, oh, just Vegas, the newbie, the baby, right? So I think that is now going to be gone, and Seattle doesn't get that chance to be an under the radar squad. So I think that's going to hinder them. But I do think that the quality of choices is a little bit better than whenever Vegas did it. So I think it's going to be close. But it really comes down to who their big names are, and do they go with veterans versus youth? If they take some of the older guys, their team could be incredibly dangerous this year. But if they do opt out and kind of go with youth, then I wouldn't be so, unless they go with Carey in net and then they build youth in front. Then you give them three, because Carey can just get you through the playoffs. Like,
Yeah.
It's so exciting.
Yeah,
I'm ready
but I
for
think,
it.
and I mean, I leave the professional opinion when it comes to players and the roster and everything like that to you guys, but
Professional.
also and a big thing that I find is also very similar to what happened in Vegas is that both cities have been waiting for a big team, professional team. I know, like, get MLB and whatever, but like a big professional team for a while, because at the time when Vegas went there, they weren't the Las Vegas Raiders. There was nothing. There was nothing there. So they got that. That was big. Everyone was waiting for that. In Seattle, like, people were thinking that they might get an NBA team before they got an NHL team. So they've been waiting for something big, and I think that city's gonna be huge. So I think the marketing, the crowd, the energy in that entire season is going to be off the hook, which you guys know comes into a huge factor, especially if we're going to start getting into some more home games and things like that, where you're going to get a big kind of run through. And those Seattle fans those Seattle fans in every sport are crazy. You know that with the Seahawks and everything.
Yeah,
like, it is
right?
It is going to be a very big thing there. So I think it will.
If their fans are half as crazy and ecstatic as the Knights were, though, like as a Habs fan, again, having to go into Vegas and play them in this playoffs recently, that sucked.
And it was crazy because at the beginning they were saying like, oh, Vegas is going to be full of other fans.
Right.
Because everybody travels into Vegas. Nobody lives in Vegas. Well, that didn't turn out. They have quite a big crew.
And Seattle will have a way better home body off the hop, right?
Because they already have a professional sports team and stuff like that. Yeah, for sure.
And they've been waiting for another one for,
they've
for
been
a very
clamoring
long
for one
time.
for a while.
And I actually thought that NBA was going to be first, but they are back. So
I wanted to ask touch base on one more thing before we sound off. We talked a little bit about beforehand. Some teams are a lot more nervous than other teams right now, because some teams have a plethora of people to pick from, and they're like, it's just one person. We've got a huge roster. Whereas other teams are like, we've got a whole bunch of young boys, and you can't take them.
Yeah, there was two teams I had noticed on that, Chicago and
Colorado.
Well, Colorado has a massive list,
right?
Because they have a ton of available players,
a huge list of experienced players that are able to be chosen from, and they don't have they didn't have a lot of rookie picks. In the last 2 years,
but because they've been such a top tier team, Chicago's been kind of on the waivers, so they've had some better younger drafts. So they have a very small list: 2, 3, 4 right wingers, 2 left wingers, 2 centers, 3 defensemen, 2 goaltenders. That's it.
Not a lot of people.
That's it. That's
the rest of their team.
That's
is 2
almost
years.
a list of protectable players.
Yeah,
which is crazy. And then the other team that had a short list as compared to most other teams who have a little bit longer list of players. Hold on, San Jose Sharks.
Right.
San Jose Sharks also had a small list because they still have a good group of young guys. But the one or two things that I noticed with them is they do seem to have a few guys that could be questionable. Like, you don't want to see them leave, like Martin Jones being an available goaltender. If they don't go Carey, Martin Jones would be a great pick at 5 to 6 mil a year instead of the 10 or 11.
Imagine they went Jones and Quick,
Yeah.
and then like Halak or something.
It's too much money.
No,
You just couldn't do all that, man.
build it from the net out, bud.
I guess.
Jeez,
And then
they
just
unstoppable.
and then just have no one up
Yeah,
front.
just
Yeah.
they just
You
have the
can't
water
start
boy.
all 3 goaltenders, Dave. Like,
Well,
The water boys just get out there. We need a fourth line. So
Yeah.
I mean, I guess to kind of wrap this up, I think one thing that, in all honesty, we haven't talked about, but I'm just gonna say now that we're gonna do is that we will do a post show after this is done,
yeah.
and we'll talk about once we know the roster, did they fare better or worse than Vegas?
Yeah.
Because that's the direct comparison right now, I think.
Yep.
They are a brand new one. So
has to be.
so I think we'll do a post show.
yeah.
We'll talk about how well we think they're going to do this year, and we'll compare it to Vegas. Obviously, like, because Vegas went to
Well, there's
you have to compare it to that, but I think we should definitely take a look at a comparison from the team, and also just where we think they're going to land next year.
it's going to be it's going to be good to do something like that too, because after this happens, there's going to be so many moves, man. There's now going to be so many moves from other teams and trades and UFAs and the new draft that's coming up for the rookie draft. So there'll be a lot going on. So, yeah, I think that's a great spot to leave off, boys. Everybody out there who's watched, thank you very much for your time. Do look forward to the next coming content for this post show, for our reaction to the upcoming draft. Of course, all of our other content. We've obviously got more podcasts coming out, more of the Hollow Hunters videos, more gaming stuff. So please tune in. Thank you again for your time. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Do as you do. Hit that ding-a-ling bell. Signing off.